Hello friends, and a warm welcome to the Slow Living Collective. This is a podcast about slowing down, living seasonally and embracing an intentional life. So introductions. I'm Amy. I'm a 30-something mum of two, homemaker, home educator and allotment gardener. And these podcasts are love notes from me, sharing the things that I sometimes need to hear myself as well. In these episodes, I'm going to delve into what it means to walk a different path, to stepping outside societal norms and embracing all the beauty that it provides. From educating our children outside of the school system, living in a small home by choice, surrounding ourselves with a life of intention instead of living a life by default. I welcome you to come on this journey with me and open your mind to maybe a different way of living. I hope you find what you're looking for within the words of these podcasts, and I hope they speak to you in your own unique way. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective. I am so happy to have you here, and I am so happy to be back on this podcast. I know I seem to say it every week, but it is always fun for me to take a little break in between episodes. Like every 10 episodes I schedule a break, and it's always fun for me to take that break to rest, recharge, and just come back with like a little more oomph. Like, I love doing these podcasts. It's never a chore. I wish I could get myself into a bit of a better routine with that, but you know, it is what it is. I always get one up in the end, and that's the most important thing. But this week I want to talk about my allotment, and I want to talk about preparing for another growing season. I want to talk about growing, I want to talk about gardening, and I want to talk about why having my allotment, having that little plot, how it has been such a game changer for me, for my family, for my mental health, my physical health. And yeah, I just want to delve into all things gardening because we are deep in the trenches of January, and sometimes in this physical season, it just feels like all of those things, growing and gardening and everything, they're just so far away. And it's that sort of time of year for me as well. This is my second January on the plot, and it feels like hope, like that season is coming. It's not here yet. The last frost dates are really, really far away, but it definitely feels like it's coming. And so I have plans for the plot this year, different plans from last year. So I want to kind of just talk over. I just want to chat. I just want to chat about my allotment. Is that okay, guys? Because I just love it. So that's what I'm going to do today. So if gardening isn't your thing, I think you'll still get a lot out of it, because I'm going to be talking like I said, mental health, physical health. And I don't know, maybe you might find that you're a secret gardener too, because I was the teenager that was like, no, gardening is a no from me, I'm afraid. Even through some of my 20s, most of my 20s, if not all of my 20s, we had this joke in my family that I would do like one day of gardening a year. And that was my one day. I would sort of, help my mum in the garden. And that was it. Once my day was done, that's pretty much it for the rest of the year. And so, like you can imagine, here I am all these years later, and have my own plot and have to keep that going. And it's funny. It's hilarious how things change. So maybe if you're not a gardener yet, maybe you will be. So just listen along, and if nothing else, I might be great background noise. So this year on the plot, I have big plans, different plans, and it's interesting because year one on the plot last year, I went into January like raring to go, like let's get going, how soon can I start planting my seeds? And I still feel that excitement now because the first thing you think of when spring is like kind of in the offing is like, when can I get planting my seeds? When can we do that? But I mean, I live in a house that has a lot of windows, and it is still such a struggle for me. There is so much natural light in this house, but it doesn't matter how much natural light you've got. The daylight hours are really just not long enough yet for almost everything. Now, I'm going to start my loofahs towards the end of the month, I think. I had a a great exciting season last year where I started growing loofahs, and I want to do that again this year. It was really difficult to get them started. Well, actually, no, it wasn't difficult to get them started. Actually, getting them to germinate was very easy, but so just, in the depths of winter, but they need such a long growing season and they need a lot of warmth. And so that was difficult. But with everything else, other seeds and stuff, I'm not going to start them as early as I did this last year. Just because what ends up happening is you can, even when it's the right time for the seeds, right? If it says like, oh, you can start planting from March was what I was actually thinking, not May. You've still got, the daylight hours are still not quite there. You end up sort of raising very fragile seeds that you might end up losing some of them. And if you can just hold off and wait a little bit longer, I know it's not easy. I'm not saying that I'm any good at it, but if you can hold off and wait a little bit longer, then you might get like a better thriving plant. But that being said, I did have a wonderful, wonderful time on the allotment last year. I have I started this podcast episode by saying I did one gardening day a year. But for a long time, certainly since I lived here, which is 6 years, I have been a balcony gardener. And something that I had been incredibly passionate about is that you can grow in any space you've got. Any space. And I have a balcony that is about 1 metre by 4 meters, so it's 4 meters length and one sort of deep. And I've been growing on there for 6 summers, but I'm not going to grow on there this year. This is going to be my first year where I'm going to commit to I'm not going to not do anything, but it's not going to be my main growing space. So last year, even though I had the plot, I did a lot on the balcony. It was like plant central out there, especially because I was obviously raising seeds for the allotment. I had 2 little greenhouses up on my balcony, and it was constantly like shuffling things around, and it was a lot. It was really a lot. There wasn't much space out there at all. My balcony is a wonderful space. We're south facing, so sun all the time. Very, very, very hot in the summer. Actually very difficult for the plants in the summer because it does get where I live in Hertfordshire, the temperatures get very warm in the summer, and on that balcony it is just relentless. Like, I can't even sit out there all day, so I don't know what I'd expect most of my plants to. So I have been thinking about this season compared to last season, because obviously both seasons I've had the allotment and I've obviously been balcony gardening for all this time. And like I said, I love the balcony. I 100% believe you can actually grow an incredible amount in what is a really small space, and you just have to be smart with it and just figure out ways. There is so much information out there. Maybe I will do like a whole episode on allotment gardening. I should make a note for myself. Last year we had this wonderful, wonderful season on the plot. We had a really good season as well on the balcony, and I was pretty much dedicated when we got the allotment that I'm going to stay doing gardening on my balcony. I'm going to do both. But actually what I found over the course of the last year is that I enjoy all gardening. And I really enjoyed growing for the allotment, and I enjoyed spending time at the allotment. And sometimes that was with all of us as a family, sometimes that was just me and the kids, sometimes that was just me. And some of those times when it was just me were lovely, especially because last year I still had a baby. He's a toddler now, but I still had a baby. And breastfeeding, I'm still breastfeeding him now. He's 18 months old, and so it was a situation, I guess, where I was constantly attached to him, and had been for a really long time. And I love breastfeeding, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. I'm incredibly grateful that I get to do it, just because I've experienced a feeding experience with breastfeeding the first time round that didn't work out and left me with a lot of grief and trauma. So I am incredibly grateful that I have had a different experience this time round. But those of you guys who breastfeed will know that it is a lot sharing your body with another human. Like, I shared 9 months of pregnancy with this human, and now we're 18 months on from that, and I'm still sharing my body, and it takes a lot. So those moments where I was able to get away, get to the allotment, just me, and not just be about boobs and feeding and breast milk and things like that, was really nice. And obviously, this year he takes less breast milk, we feed less, and so I expect that maybe I'll be able to spend even more like stretches of time there by myself, which I'm really looking forward to. And so yeah, it's just gonna be nice. It's gonna be a good season on the plot. So one of the things that I thought last year was, I didn't know what I was doing. I took over the allotment in October 2021, and it was, so my plot is, I think, about 15 feet wide, and it's around 70 foot long. That's just roughly. So it's sort of long and narrow. I really like that. I like how it's set up, and it feels nice. One of the first things we did, having 2 children, just a 2-year age gap. My daughter was 2 when we got the allotment, and my son was 5 months old. And so one of the first things we did was put a fence up, not because I didn't want people to think, that I was going there and staking out my claim, this is my territory, but more that I had this space where, I had a 2-year-old that, she likes to run. She still likes to run there. And so it was important for me that I had a space where I knew that she was safe. And that will continue with my son as well. Now he's walking, just a space where they're just, they're free but within limits, because I don't want them running away, but I also don't want them running over other people's plots and things like that. And the whole place is a learning environment for us. We home educate, so we'll obviously be teaching them that that's not what we do, but it's not that simple. As if you've got children, you'll know it's not as simple as like, we don't run on other people's plots, end of. It's a learning process. So we're learning that all the time, and so it felt right to me that we had this sort of like little fenced off area. And so we fenced around it with just a low fence, like we can step over it, and that has really helped keep them within the confines, and they also understand then what the boundaries are, because allotments, they are higgledy-piggledy, and they look, it's like green space everywhere. They don't know what the confines of our plot is without that guidance, so that felt like the right thing to do for us. And at first, so the person that had been there before, they had like a double compost heap, which was in the middle, which didn't feel like that really worked for us. And they had, I believe that the people, my allotment neighbours, didn't really know too much about the person who had the allotment before me. So in that sense as well, it's nice to be able to sort of go and have a bit of a fresh slate. So the person before me did some incredible growing, actually. Like when we inherited some amazing cabbages. They were huge, far bigger than what I have achieved in the last year. And there was potatoes there. What else was there? There was kale. There was beans. I can't even remember now. How bad is that? Oh, lots of squash, pumpkin. And so, but we had this idea on how we wanted the plot to look and how we wanted to make it workable. Like, the person before us had just literally like worked in rows, and like that's great, but and a lot of our allotment neighbours do work in rows like that. But for us, we wanted sort of like more beds. to make it easy to tend to, but also we wanted this sort of, again, a definition and a boundary that the children can see, like this is where we grow and these are the parts you can walk on. And that's very difficult this time of year because the whole place is like turned to mud. But we have like ground beds rather than raised beds, although I'll get to it. We are going to do some raised beds. But yeah, we liked that boundary. I like the idea of having, space that I can sort of kneel down and, just do some weeding, tend to the plants and things like that. So that has that really worked for us. So we pretty much took the plot from how it was. We as we sort of harvested some of the stuff that we were lucky enough to inherit, we then were able to see the plot as a blank canvas. Once everything was pulled up, and in the depths of winter, everything has died back as well, and it just honestly looked like a bit of a muddy, grassy mess. And so all we really had from top to bottom was grass, mud, and this little compost heap in the middle. There was no shed, no greenhouse, nothing like that. And so it really was a blank canvas for us. And to that, like, I know it must be nice to inherit like a well-worked plot that's sort of well-defined, but also it was really nice having a blank canvas. It was a lot of work, a lot of work. So one of the first things we did was move our compost heaps, and we knew at the time when we moved them, which was this time last year, January 2022, we moved them to the far end of the plot, and because that just worked better, being in the middle of the plot, although I guess easily accessible from all areas, whereas if you're doing something at the opposite end of the plot, you've got quite the walk, and I don't yet have a wheelbarrow. It's on the list, but yeah, so we decided to move it to the far end for many reasons. Firstly, to get it out of the way. We knew where we eventually would like a shed, and we wanted the compost heap up the other end. I don't know why. There was sort of no real reason for that. But the other end of the plot where the compost heap is in direct sun all the time, constantly. So it's got that heat, so it will help compost. Like we managed to make some good compost in the last year, to be honest, but it's something we want to sort of like ramp up. So we have just redone our compost area again, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And so we were able to move that. Then we were able to start like marking out where the beds will be, and as time went on, we were able to dig over the beds. I know there's some discussion between whether that's the right thing to do or not, whether you dig beds, whether you do no dig. And we decided for last year that we were going to dig beds. We were going to sort of have them marked out. We were going to have them in the ground rather than as a raised bed, container gardening kind of situation. And so, yeah, we marked out some beds. We had I can't remember whether it was 7 or 8 beds in length, sort of like from the top to the bottom of the plot, and one long one that ran from the top to the bottom down the side. And we put in a little stone path, which was something I wanted. I wanted that sort of like little definition, I guess. We were able to pick up some free slabs off Marketplace, and so that was fantastic. So we didn't have to pay for that. And yeah, we marked out the beds. I sort of made a plan, rough ideas on where I wanted what. And then just as the season went on, more and more things sort of came about. I was able to obtain a free 6x4 shed. That was amazing. I paid for a smaller storage shed as well, which is an absolute mess, and I tend not to unlock it. So that is on my to-do list for this coming spring. I'm actually going to move it as well, so I'm going to have to empty it. So maybe that will encourage me to sort of clear it out. And that's just got stuff like we've got some chairs in there. We bought some little garden chairs for the kids. I've got like cloches and things like that in there. Like, yeah, I know it's going to be full of big spiders, and so I'm just avoiding it. And as time goes on, I'm sure more and more are building their home in there. But yeah, so I was able to obtain that as well. That was second hand, and I got that for £50. And so I got both those sheds at the same time, and so that's been perfect. We used to have to take all of our tools to the allotment, and yeah, it was just a little annoying. Like we were saying the other day, actually, when we came back from the plot, like, do you remember when we used to have to take all of our tools every time, like carry them and like fit them in between us, the kids' car seats? It was wild, but you do what you've got to do at the time, and so we did that. Get in the shed and being able to leave the tools behind was amazing, and completely amazing to get a free shed. That was it was in such good condition as well. So I'm actually think I'm going to paint it this coming spring. So I'm open to ideas on what colour I can paint it. Something fun, I think. I want something fun. Maybe even like a two-tone shed. Who knows? I'm definitely open to ideas. And something we're going to do this year is a greenhouse. Now, I'm in this season of life where I have two very small children. My daughter's 3, my son is 1, and I don't want to have to go and take down someone's greenhouse to transport it, to put it on my plot and put it back up again. And I know that lots of people are giving away greenhouses, but I can't find anything that really honestly works. I've been looking since last year. And so for this coming season, unless a miracle happens, I've been doing some research, and I know these are not the best, but hear me out. I'm going to get one of the large walk-in plastic ones, and I'm going to be able to, the position where I'm going to put it is right next to my shed, so I'm going to be able to anchor it to my shed. I've been doing lots of research into how to sort of anchor them down and make them stronger. The good thing is the greenhouse is going to be positioned, like I said, between the shed, but the other side is a big tree. So it's going to be in a good position for being able to sort of stabilise it and anchor it down. And I've been looking at things on how to sort of like anchor it down at the bottom and weight it. And so that's the plan. I don't have the space or the time to be taking down someone else's greenhouse. It's just not able to do it. And sometimes you just have to draw a line, don't you, and say, like, no, as much as a free greenhouse is fantastic, I just can't see how we could make it work at this point of our life. So for now, we're just going to get one of the cheaper plastic ones and do our utmost, work our absolute hardest to secure it well. And it's going to be secured on 3 out of the 4 sides anyway, so it'll only be the front. So hopefully, if you've got any tips, please let me know. Please let me know tips on how to sort of anchor these things better, because I obviously don't want it to buckle and blow away. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Also, like brand new greenhouses. If you've ever been in the market for a brand new greenhouse, you know that they're not cheap. So that's not an option. So that's what I'm thinking with the greenhouse. I'm actually really excited about it because having done a lot of research, I know there are ways to secure them well, and as long as I've got a bit of a slapdash personality, but my husband is a bit more thorough. So I'm hoping that together we'll be able to come to an agreement, find a plan, and get this greenhouse in and safe. I don't know when I'm going to buy it, not yet. It's January, and the windy weather is still to come, and I want to give it the best chance, at least get some time with it in case it buckles and blows away. And my plan is that at the end of the growing season for this year, I'll actually take it down, if that's a possibility, to preserve it, so not keep it up through the winter. Although there are people on my allotments that have those kind of greenhouses that do leave them up all the time. So maybe because our allotment, the way it's set up, it's actually got three, it's like in a triangle basically, and it's protected by houses on all three sides. It does get windy there, but I'm just wondering actually to what extent. So anyway, we'll see. That's going to be the plan in terms of the greenhouse, and I'm really, really looking forward to that, because obviously that means that I can go to the plot and like just potter in the greenhouse. And so I've picked one. I think it's 6x4, so it's going to be pretty much like the shed. And yeah, I think as long as I can get it secured well, I think it'll be a really good addition to the space. Firstly, it means I don't have to do the seeds at home, and it does mean that I don't have to worry about it on the balcony. And it'll mean that, even in rain or just a bit naff weather, I can just go in the greenhouse and potter around. Like, if it rains now when I'm at the plot, we all have to like shuffle into the shed, and that's great, but you can't really, there's nothing to do in the shed. So having the greenhouse, I think it would just be fantastic, because, I can just be in there, I can potter around, plant some seeds, check how my seedlings are getting on. I see people on Instagram in their greenhouses, and I'm like, I want to be in my greenhouse. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really nice addition to the plot. And, once we've figured out all the secure stuff to make sure that it's all right, I think it'll be a really, really nice addition. And who knows what the future will hold in terms of a greenhouse. We shall see. So I mentioned earlier about the compost heap and how it was in the middle of our plot when we inherited it. We moved it to the end this time last year, January 2022, and basically it's just a compost heap made up of wooden pallets, and it could be better. I kind of have always viewed it as more like just like a bin heap than anything, although throwing everything on it that's compostable. And it's interesting actually, because I always thought, it's not going to produce anything of any good quality, but actually we have just been redoing the compost heaps, and because we have some different ideas, we have thought I think we saw how things worked last year, and we had a bed right in front of the compost heap, and it made it impossible. Oh, it was so annoying. So we decided sort of midway through the season that once that bed was done for the year, we were quite happy to like forego it, I guess, and have that space in front of the compost heap. And then as we sort of thought about it more, we decided that, okay, is there better things we could use for composting? And the pallets that we used were pallets that had been there for a long time and were part of the old compost heap, and a lot of the wood is rotting. And so I popped in just before Christmas, and I noticed that one of the sides had come down on one of the compost heaps, probably I think in the snow, probably the weight of it just gave out. And so we had a thought about how we would do the compost heap in future. And so we thought, like, could we build another one out of pallets? But I actually wanted, something where I can access the compost at the bottom, and to purchase a wooden compost heap, just one, you're talking like £200, and I don't have an endless amount of money to plough into the allotment, or anything. So we did some research, and we had a very long debate between ourselves over what was the right course of action. Was the right thing to use wood? Was using like a plastic bin? Was that the right route to be going in terms of sustainability? And ultimately we have to work within our means. So in an ideal world, I would be able to either buy or build a great wooden compost heap, and I'm not saying that I won't in the future, but we're in that season of life where with the two small children, a lot of what we do at the plot has to work in terms of the time we have available in which to do it. And so we ummed and ahed a lot, and we ultimately decided to purchase some plastic composting bins. We purchased 2. I don't know, we're gonna do more than just 2 compost bins. I don't know whether we are going to do a wooden one on top of that, or whether we'll have another plastic one. I just don't know. But I was really impressed with, what the reviews I had about creating good compost. And like I said, it's just this sort of like balance, isn't it? Over what works and what works for you. And that's ultimately all you can really do. And we wanted to create a compost area as soon as possible. Actually creating and generating our own compost is incredibly important to us. And so we had to, it was that balance. We had to act within sort of like the realms of our finances, the realms of what we're actually capable of doing in this season of our life with very small children. We're tired a lot of the time, and the plot is tiring, whether you've got children or not. The plot is very tiring, and so we had to do what worked for us. And I'm really pleased with how it looks. We're just sort of starting with that, really. We had the 2 bins, we built them, put them up, and had to start transferring stuff into it. But I was really, really pleased. I've managed to take down, of the 2 wooden compost heaps, I've managed to clear almost one of them, and the compost at the bottom is amazing. It's so good quality. I was really pleased. So I'm actually, and this was like an open compost heap, right? It was like not covered or anything. And yeah, so I'm really quite pleased with how I composted like that, considering we've got ideas on how we're going to compost in the future. And so the compost bins that we've bought give you access at the bottom, so you load into the top and then you can access the compost at the bottom. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with how it's going. And we were able to, that bed I mentioned, we did, sort of, I flatten it down, clear it out. It's very muddy there at the moment. But what we actually found when we started to use that space was that we actually had a lot of space back there. And while we need some space to get to the compost heap, what we ended up with by getting rid of that one bed was that we ended up with almost too much space. But then that sort of like opened our minds to, okay, so what else could we do here? And at the edge of the compost area, we have built 3 raised beds, which weren't in my original plans. So I'm really pleased with that, because it means that, I've now got this additional growing space that I didn't expect. And obviously, as we take down the wooden compost bins as well, particularly the one that I've just emptied, there's going to be sort of some additional space there too. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what we're going to do as we get further through this project. I don't know whether we're going to sort of rebuild a wooden compost heap, like I said, or whether we'll go down the plastic route for now. I'm just not sure. I mean, this is not like I don't plan on making this compost thing like a yearly change up. So although yes, using plastic not the most sustainable option, it's I'm pleased with the fact that it's going to be a long-term plan. So it's not like a single use is basically what I'm saying. I plan for this to be the compost area for the rest of time, however long we have the plot, however long the bins last, whatever comes first. So yeah, I'm pleased with how it's looking. I don't know, we do want more composting space. Like I said, it's a priority of ours. But I think in some of the space where the old compost bins have been as well, I reckon I'm going to be able to get another small raised bed there. So yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to do with all this extra that I am finding. But that leads on nicely to sort of like how I'm going to design the plot for this year. And to be honest, it's largely the same. I'm not changing up too much. Some of the things I found last year was pretty much that some things worked and some things didn't, and I'm just going to change up a real few things to see how I get on. Now, I'm going to share with you some of the stuff that I am going to grow this year. So, I'll tell you if I grew them last year as well. So, I am going to grow flowers in sort of the long bed. I told you I have a long bed that runs from top to bottom. I'm going to do at one end of that. I've got some bulbs planted, some I can't even think, daffodils and things. They're already planted. I'm not really sure what else I'm going to do in this side bed, to be honest. It's one of these things that I love having it there because it's a useful use of the space, but last year it was one of those spaces that what do I do with it? And at the other far end, the very far end, I have a gooseberry bush and a raspberry bush, so it's sort of got where my fruit bushes will be. And so I'm still thinking on it. I'm not sure whether I'm going to get a blackberry bush. Thinking on it. Yeah, just thinking. I don't quite know how to have it. Last year I had some pumpkins in it. Didn't really work. Well, I mean, it did. They grew. But not the right space for pumpkins. I obviously had the raspberry bush and the gooseberry bush there, and that was fine. I tried to grow cucumbers in there. It didn't really work. I had some salad stuff in there, but I had salad stuff somewhere else, so again, didn't really feel right. Had my runner beans in there. My runner beans didn't do well last year. And so it was just one of those beds that I've just got this real feeling about, and I'm just not really sure. So I need to sort of sit with that, I think. But I'm also going to grow rhubarb. I inherited a good rhubarb patch, and I actually bought an extra rhubarb plant last year. So I'm going to continue with that. Up by the rhubarb as well is the rhubarb is next to where the old compost bins are, and so I was talking about potentially having space for another sort of bed up there, I think probably a raised bed, and I might do sunflowers up there. I think the kids would love sunflowers. So I'm going to grow tomatoes again. I grew tomatoes last year in abundance. Had a wonderful season with tomatoes, and I grew a lot of them from seed, and one of my fellow plot holders actually gave me a load of tomatoes as well, and his tomatoes were lush. Actually, the ones I grew were amazing too. Very, very, very tasty. And I actually saved some seeds, dried them out, and when the time comes, I've got to hold out, but when the time comes, I'm going to replant my seeds from last year. So I'm trying to get this sort of cycle going. I'm going to grow parsnips again because I had a really good season with parsnips, and we had a lovely abundance of parsnips for our Christmas lunch. I'm going to do lettuce again. I grew salad bowl lettuce, the one you just pick the leaves off. I like that. I also do like the little gems. My husband's not so keen on the little gems, so I'm quite happy to, I don't know that I really want to do both. I'm going to do potatoes, and I did main crop last year, and I think I'm going to do earlies, main crop, and maybe even some lates, and I'm going to probably switch that up between some in the ground and some in tubs. So I had two of those tubs that you drag dirt around in that broke last year, and so I've kept hold of them. So I'm potentially thinking I might do some potatoes in there. I'm going to do more sweet corn. I only did 3 sweet corn last year, and it's funny story. I only did 3, or I only germinated 3, and all year I was telling anybody who listened oh yeah, I only germinated 3, and I couldn't do any more because I didn't have any more seeds, and I truly believed that until I recently went through my seed box, and I was I've got more sweet corn here. So I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, I'm going to do more sweet corn. And the ones I did grow were okay. So the tomatoes I grew last year, fantastic. Lettuce I grew last year, fantastic. Parsnips, fantastic. Potatoes, fantastic. Sweet corn, not so much. The runner beans, not so much. And the cucumbers, I'm horrendous at growing cucumbers. One day I'll break the back of cucumbers, but it wasn't last year or the year before, the year before that. I'm going to do peas again. Loved doing peas last year. I did earlies and main crop, and they were perfect. I'm going to try garlic this year. And I'm also going to do a bed of beetroot and leek. I did they're great companion plants. I did beetroot and leek last year, and the bed was absolutely thriving. So I'm not going to do it in the same place, obviously, because I want to rotate, but beetroot and leek was top notch. And then I am actually going to do runner beans again. I'm going to give them a go. And what else I have built one raised bed, but I'm actually going to build another, and I'm going to use them for my brassicas so I can easily cage them. I did do an in the ground brassica bed last year. Did cover it, made like a DIY cage. It wasn't that successful, so I'm going to give it another try in like a raised bed. So we've built one and we're going to have another one next to it, and so I want to do like cauliflower, Brussels, broccoli, cabbage, things like that, and I also want to do onions this year as well. Also going to build a raised bed for the children, and I'm going to let them decide what they want to grow. Who knows what they want to grow, but we're going to do some flowers all together as a family anyway. So whether they want to do vegetables or whether they want to do flowers or a mixture, we'll figure it out together. And so I guess that's mainly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do strawberries on the balcony because I always do strawberries on my balcony. I really, really, really want to have like a really thriving herb garden. I did herbs on the balcony last year. I'm not going to do the herbs on the balcony this year, but I've got one of those herb pots, where you've got like several layers and they like poke out in different places. You know what I mean? So I'm going to probably take that to the plot, and I'm going to have herbs in that, but I might also do herbs in a raised bed. And then on the balcony I might do some herbs. I saw this great thing, and I think it was like a Modern Garden magazine, but it basically showed those hanging things you can get that have pockets in them. It was basically like using one of them on like a balcony or hanging it on a wall or whatever, and you grow your herbs in the little pockets. And I saw that and I was like, oh, I'd love to give that a go on my balcony. So I think I'm going to try that on my balcony and then have like a much more extensive herb garden somewhere on the plot, probably in a raised bed and also in that pot I was saying about. So that's the plans for that. I love using herbs. I just love using my own produce. And so I'm just excited for this coming season. It's that time of year where I get back at the plot and start evaluating like, okay, what heavy work do we need to do to get this place ready for growing season? And this year I want to kind of have a bit more of an all-round. So what I did last year was, by autumn it was very much putting everything to bed and I wasn't growing anything or overwintering anything. And so I want to think more about the things that I can grow sort of later in the season over the winter, and things like that. So yeah, I'm hoping to make this sort of like perpetual plot and see how that goes. Other than that as well, I do have a cold frame to put up. I don't quite know where I'm going to put that yet. Lots of things sort of still thinking about, still a work in progress. So yeah, it will just be fun to see how it comes together. It's nice to have a few little bits to change, but I don't intend to make that like a constant I'm not moving the compost heap every year, put it that way. But so I'm hoping some of these changes will be some sort of more permanent ones. And it's just nice actually to have done that first year and tried everything. I tried growing so much last year, and it was nice to do that and to try all these different things and figure out what I enjoyed actually, above everything else, what I enjoyed growing and what I didn't. So, for example, radishes. I don't like radishes. I grew them in abundance because they're easy to grow, right? I grew them in absolute abundance, and that's great. And I might actually still grow some this year, because I tell you what I noticed is, because I left them uncovered, the slugs and snails all flocked to it and kept away from the rest of my plants, because that's something I am an organic gardener. I don't use anything to deter pests other than, like I put my brassicas in a cage. I don't use chemicals, and I just like my plot to be part of this ecosystem. It is this sort of living, breathing place that I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to put chemicals there. I don't want chemicals in my food. Like, that's one of the things that I'm hugely passionate, hugely passionate about, is I don't want chemicals in my food. It's why I want to grow my own. So I certainly don't, I don't want to be putting slug repellent. I mean, I know that's banned and stuff, but, I don't want to be putting these things down. I don't want that in my body. I don't want it in the soil where I grow my food. And so, yeah. It's a common question I get actually is, how do I avoid pests? And the simple answer is, I don't. They live there too, and we just sort of figure it out and work together. So that was a lovely long episode. I knew once I got started I would be so excited to share what I was doing for the coming year. So you can follow me over on Instagram. My Instagram username is @lifeonplot44, and you can find everything about Life on Plot 44, funnily enough. It's not just an allotment account. I do share a lot of allotment stuff there, but I also share about slow and simple living, seasonal living, not so much motherhood, maybe a bit of motherhood from my perspective, but just our life and the things we're passionate about. And the plot is a huge part of that. And obviously over the winter it's a little less because we're not there so much, but as the season ramps up, we spend a lot of time out and about and at the plot. So you'll definitely see lots more allotment content. Something else that I've just started doing as well is sharing our allotment adventures on YouTube. I don't know if I'm going to keep it strictly for allotment stuff, but at least the first 2 videos I've put up have been allotment related. So you can head over there. I will leave the link in the show notes, because I don't know what that is off the top of my head, or even if it's something, I don't even know what my username is. Probably Life on Plot 44, but I couldn't guarantee it, I'll tell you that. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I would love to connect with you on Instagram, on YouTube. Leave me a question. I believe you can leave me a question on this podcast if you're listening on Spotify. And yeah, let's just connect. And community is so important to me, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who listen. I occasionally check in with my stats, and it's so fun to see people actually listening. Or when you guys message me on Instagram and say, I'm just listening to your podcast, I'm always blown away. So thank you ever so much for all your support and enabling me to just sit here and chat. I love it. I love nothing more. So thank you again, and I will catch you in the next episode.